This is Perrysburg City Council for September 21st, 2021. Tom Mack and the mayor, so we do have somebody on. Let's do the roll call.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Here.
Ms. Materney? Here. Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Van Hoosen?
Here.
Mr. Weber?
Here. Please stand if you're able and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes from the September 7th council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Public hearing, I'm sorry.
Everyone did receive a copy of the public hearing as well as the council meeting minutes. So I'm just going to separate them just because it's a little easier for me. What I would, sorry, I lost the council meeting minutes. Hang on, I got the, oh, they're attached, I'm sorry. I am going to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written and dispense with their reading.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Hoosen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Then I'll make a motion to approve the public hearing meeting minutes as written and dispense with the reading.
Second. Discussion, roll call.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Hoosen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Thank you,
And
Mayor.
we want to note that we had a new recording secretary and we drew right to the fire. Well done. So we appreciate that. Special reports, we have no special reports. Letters, communications, citizens' concerns. If you're here for a particular item on the agenda, wait for that item. But if you just want to speak, come on up to the podium and introduce yourself, name and address.
Not on the agenda. Denny Barrett, 25400. Excuse me, Fort Meigs Road, apartment 37. You've heard me many times say how much I like Perrysburg, what a good city it is, and it's certainly because of the administration and the city leaders that makes it such a good city. But I need to put my 2 cents worth in for something that's been going on for the last few months and ended this Saturday. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, Maumee had its usual late summer festival. Last week, Bowling Green had its Black Swamp Festival. This past Saturday, the Islam church out on south of Perrysburg had a big annual celebration, and next week in Waterville, Roast the Booth is going on. This week in Perrysburg, nothing. There was a little bit of something, thank goodness. A group of volunteers made a 2-week last-ditch effort to have a Harrison Rally Day, and they did, but it wasn't anything like the Harrison Rally Days that I've been going to for the last 15 years. And over those 15 years, almost every time I would see city officials, mayors, council people hanging around Louisiana Avenue and marching in the parade. This past Saturday, I saw nobody, so very disappointing.
Okay, thank you. I have no report, but I do have a number of reappointments and appointments. I will recommend the reappointment of Doug Sasko and Keith Wall from Board of Income Tax Review, Craig Ryder to Board of Zoning Appeals, Andrew Lorenz for the Planning Commission, Will Harbaugh to the PRAC, Kaylee Swadia and James Hagan to the Street Commission, and Anderson Alcroft to the Way Library Board, and a new appointment of Jason Daniels to the Way Public Library Board.
Mayor, thank you. I'll jump in if you don't mind. We did have the appointment review committee meeting here this evening, and every one of those candidates were accepted unanimously. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to approve the individuals mentioned by the mayor.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. City Administrator, do you have a report?
No report?
Finance Director?
No report.
But I see something kind of change. Dave, I never had a report, except for occasionally you say something about a calendar or something. The Law Director?
I do actually have two things. Do you want those now or do you want to do them later?
Let's do them later.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Oh, no, let's do it, well, let's just get it done, let's do it now, I'm sorry. They won't take long. so.
They should not. These are two ordinances to annex two properties into the city of Perrysburg. Both of these are the request of the homeowner. They have been provided sewer and water some time ago, and we're just cleaning up some boundaries and some old annexations that needed to be cleaned up. One is at 13427 Five Point Road, and one is at 24602 Fort Meigs Road. According to the ordinance, to the Ohio Revised Code, once these were approved by the Wood County Commissioners, which they were, the first meeting 60 days after approval was when it was to come before City Council for you to review. You have 120 days to make a decision. If you don't vote in favor, they don't get annexed.
They could act on them today, though, correct?
Absolutely. In fact, I would prefer you do that and we just be done with it unless somebody has an objection. Thank you.
Then what I would do is I would like to introduce ordinance 44 and 45, 2021, and move the rules be suspended to allow first reading by number and title only and dispense with the second and third reading.
Second. Just, roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Ordinance 44, 2021, accepting the petition of Ann Brenner and Keith Brenner, 13427 Five Point Road for annexation into the city. Ordinance 45, 2021, accepting the petition of Ryan Roth, 24602 Fort Meigs Road for the annexation into the city.
All right, I move that ordinance 44 and 45, 2021 be passed.
Second. Discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney, Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
President of Council report.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have a report today.
Committee report. Finance Committee.
No, given plan zoning has.
Oh, yeah, that's right, sorry, I talked about it, I forgot about it. Because there are people here, we're gonna move planning and zoning out of order to the front. Apologize.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. This is Tim McCarthy, Chairman of the Planning and Zoning Committee. We met on September 15, present with myself, committee members Corey Kuhlman and Barry Van Huzen. Also present were Bridget Hammond, our city administrator, Kate Sandrello, our law director, Brody Walters, our planning and zoning administrator, and Mark Easterling, our deputy planning and zoning administrator. For a substantive issue last night, that night was the rezoning of a property on Williams Road from C4 Highway Commercial to I-1 Light Industrial. Mr. Walters told us the most recent occupant of the property was Rico Equipment, which is not dissimilar to Vandalia Rental, which either has purchased or is under contract to purchase the site. We in the committee all agreed that it makes sense there and fits the area, and we therefore voted 3-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning request to council. Which comes later in an ordinance, I don't have it marked, but we'll hear about it in a minute. Next item that night was the historic district boundaries update. Mr. Walters stated that the survey drawing showing the existing boundary of the district was used to identify boundary issues such as excluded parcels and parcels that contain structures that were only partially within the district. Mr. Kuhlman asked why we did this survey, and Brody explained the history of that Mr. Walters stated that they would be translating the drawing back into a legal description. Mr. Van Hoosen asked about the Elm House, and Brody stated that the Elm House requested that their one building in the district be removed, and the Historic Landmarks Commission didn't find value in leaving it in that one building. Again, we voted 3-0 to forward this to council with our recommendation. Next item that night was a rezoning on Echo Junction Road near the Black Diamond property, rezoning from office and service to C4 highway commercial. Josh Sema, who's present with us tonight, was here by Zoom also. He represents the applicant Simon CRE, and he stayed there looking to provide an amenity in Perrysburg, and they had previously got input from Calendar Corner residents. Mr. Shripsema stated that the surrounding properties are C4, and that C1, C2, and C3 do not attract the same level of use. Excuse me, Mr. Van Hoosen stated that going from OS to C4 seems like going from one extreme to another. Peter Gwynn, who represents the residents, stated that the new development should be compatible with residential areas. He asked to leave it as OS or C1, and that rezoning to C4 could do damage to residential properties. I responded that I don't know what the right zoning is for that site, but C4 seems too extreme. C4 highway commercial is said to be appropriate for areas fronting on major highways, which is not the case here. Mr. Coleman said it would be helpful to know what is going in here, and that we would be going from very restrictive to very broad. Corey said that he's hard pressed to vote without knowing what will go in there. Mr. Shripsema stated that this parcel is an island of office space, that they only work with national credit tenants, and that if they walk away from this property, the interest on the property will decline. He also stated that C4 is the highest and best use. Mr. Walters pointed out that there will be more than 120 feet between the property lines, and he recognized that addressing residents' concerns are valid and genuine, but the change is not inappropriate. Mr. Van Hoosen asked how long it has been OS, and Mr. Walters said at least since 2006. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend against rezoning the property. We also discussed the land use plan update. There was a subject of a plan at a public hearing 2 weeks ago. The sole issue really discussed that night was the issue involving the heights. I reminded everyone that the city is not going to annex and hold those 44 homes. Paul Velazquez, president of the Perrysburg Heights Community Association, recapped the comments he had made at the public hearing, reminding everyone that they might want to remain a residential community. And he also said that Perrysburg Heights community was not made aware that it was a target for land use plan, and he told us about a $500,000 grant that the Heights had received in order to put in sidewalks and lamp posts, remake the parking lot, and build an outdoor pavilion. Mr. Walters said that the whole thing was never intended to be secret. There was discussion about the fact that we are going to be bringing a consultant in to do a presentation about the land use plan update as a part of a council committee and poll meeting, and the city will coordinate with the Heights Association on that date. I assured everyone that they would be a part of the process through the end, and thank them for coming. Mr. Coleman encouraged them to follow the city on Facebook and Twitter, and reminded them that all our meetings, city council meetings, are posted on the city website. Final item that night was land use permits. We had talked about that in last month's meeting, as there's an issue regarding land use permits for extra virgin food services, super suppers, and second little cupcakes. Brody, at our request, had checked with Wood County, and they had issued a permit before the interior work was done. The county conceded that it should have requested a city land use permit before issuing its permit. Mr. Walters said the businesses are currently existing in conflict with the code, with 2 planning and zoning code violations. Ms. Campbell said that food processing, which is what X3 could do there, is permitted, then that is an option available to the businesses. The committee expressed support for enforcing the code as written. There's no further business. We adjourned at 8:11 p.m. We meet again on Wednesday, October 13 at 5:30 p.m. And with that, I think I've signed a couple ordinances here. And I'll introduce them separately. I'd like to introduce ordinance 51-2021 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and be dispensed with the second and third readings.
Second. Roll call.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni? Yes. Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ordinance 51-2021, amending the zoning map of the city of Perrysburg, Wood County, Ohio, to rezone 12425 Williams Road from C4 Highway Commercial to I-1 Light Industrial.
All right, I would then move that ordinance 51-2021 be passed.
Second. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
I would then move that ordinance 52-2021 be, or I'd like to introduce it, move that the ordinance be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second. Roll call.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ordinance 52-2021, amending the zoning map of the city of Perrysburg, Wood County, Ohio, to rezone property on Ethel Junction Road from OS Office and Service to C4 Highway Commercial.
I'll introduce it for passage, although I intend to vote against it. I would move that ordinance 52-2021 be passed.
Second.
I have discussion here.
Okay, discussion.
Since the committee agreed on this one, 3-0, to recommend against the rezoning of the property, and I would have to say that I will not be voting for this one.
Alright.
Well, I guess I can tackle this one. Since I've had some time to sit on it, the more I think about this one, and I wish Mr. Gwynn were in the audience, because I've kind of changed my opinion on this the more I've thought about it. It really bothered me during that meeting. Everything around it is the only thing that is office and service. And it's been for sale, my understanding, since about 2008 as an office service. They've been trying to do something with this property. And I really just do not like impeding someone's ability to use and enjoy their land. I understand it potentially affects their neighbors at Calendar Court. But they have a right to use their land as well. And I think that is, the surrounding areas are all C4. So I'm hoping the impact would be minimal to the residential neighborhood that's adjacent to it. And there is a buffer there of a driveway and a ditch. And I'm hoping they'll be good neighbors. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and vote that this gets rezoned, because I really don't see any way around this. I think what will happen is potentially there will be a petition down the road for potentially another rezoning, and it'll go through because it'll sit there for longer. So I intend to support this one.
Any other? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that I am actually a person who lived right over by here. I don't live in Calendar Court. I've lived over in 2 different neighborhoods, just buying houses literally around the corner from each other. I know this area fairly decently. I know the concerns with the intersection on 25 and Echo Junction there. That is probably our worst intersection in the city. With that, and I can say that when Costco was coming through, I was probably one of the few people there that was in support of it. Just because I knew the upgrades already coming to that intersection, those upgrades have definitely helped that intersection itself. I do want to point out that this is, if I understand correctly from what Mr. Walter said at the public hearing, that there's not going to be any curb cuts put into Echo Junction. They are going to be required to hook up to the driveway that has the traffic signals. And so I do intend to support this transition, just as we look at the C4 and the surrounding zoning around it. It seems to make sense, and it doesn't seem to fit overall with the surrounding uses itself. But that's really what I have to add into that point.
Just because I know people who came in are interested, just so you know, we did move it up on the agenda because people were from out of town, so I apologize for that. Tim has read the minutes from the committee report out, and now they've moved for consideration of the action.
And since they're there, I want to recap kind of what I said. I know we were at the planning and zoning. You could probably tell I was teetering. I've given this considerable amount of thought, and it really just bothers me that we're affecting someone's ability to use the land. The fact that they've had it for sale for a certain period of time, since like 2008, and it's been zoned office and service, and they've been trying to actively do something with it. And I think, again, that eventually we end up back here and there's another application to rezone, and we have a potential tenant locked in. I think we need to allow this land to be used, so I intend to support this.
I have a question. Well, it's not a question, it's more along a comment. C4, by definition, abuts the highway. This piece of property does not have direct access on any highway, and in my opinion, with that definition, it does not meet C4 criteria. One of the suggestions was C1 or whatever. And I would also like to point out that that was always zoned like that when he bought that, and he should have been aware of that.
Yeah, as I said that night, I don't know what the zoning ultimately will be. Like, I think Barry and I both were a little uncomfortable with just going, I think we said that night, that didn't say the minutes, but going from OS to C4 is like going from 0 to 90 in a minute. I could see this. I don't think this is the last we'll hear of this property. I think it's gonna come back, maybe with consideration of a different commercial zoning classification. You know, it might come back with a more specific project. Corey said that night a couple times, and I understand that the representative can't meet his request, but he said a couple times that night, it would be great to know who the tenant would be. You know, so I think this may not be the last we'll hear of this. We may hear a proposal for a less intensive commercial zoning category. We may hear a proposal like came through with Costco, where he had a very specific description of the use that would be put in there. So there, I don't know if this is going to be the final end for the next 20 years as to what's going to happen to this land, but for now I remain convinced that C4 is just too much.
Council, I'm the applicant. Would you like to have opportunity to speak? Or are you comfortable where we are? Can't hear you.
Try to fix it again.
Well, wait. Pete, do you want to say anything? I don't know if there's anything more that needs to be added at this point. I think we've talked at length about it.
Yes, you want me to come up?
Yes.
Try again.
We're focused on that, so why don't you just come up for a second?
Can you go on to the actual Zoom and select the speakers?
I agree with Mr. McCarthy that this is going from 0 to 90 in one fell swoop. I think the real point I want to make is the number of permitted and special uses that could be put on this property. No matter what the developer says now about national credit uses, you must look at what could go in there, and a lot of it shouldn't go next to a residential area. More McDonald's, Sonic burgers, outside dog kennels, gas stations, auto repair. I think I've left my list, and I think Brody also left the same list. I think there's an opportunity, and I'm not so foolish to think this property won't be developed. However, and I think at some point it will probably be of some type of commercial or a mixed residential and commercial, but this is absolutely too intense. And as I remarked before, if you want this to look like Route 20 with signs all over the place and every franchisee known to man stuck in there, then that's what you're going to get.
Thank you. Sure. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Josh Courtney, 3591 River Ridge Way. I was here at the planning and zoning meeting the other night, and I understand the position and the concerns of the residents of the residential community that's close. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. Calendar Corner. Josh couldn't provide the exact, type of business or what use would be there. Afterwards, I thought maybe, I don't know if a couple more questions would have sufficed if he could tell us the number of employees or the type of, the total income that could be generated or jobs that would be added to the city. I don't know if that's a question he could answer by losing him or by losing the potential suitor. Also I did just want to indicate too, and kind of bridge to the discussion we had at the Heights, that I understand the concerns of the citizens here, and even 120 or 150 foot space or buffer, doesn't seem to be quite enough for them. And we do have neighbors in the Heights that have this commercial use on the other side of a privacy fence where there's a dumpster. So when we kind of balance what's okay in one spot in the city and what's okay not far away, I hope we are looking at the overall benefit of the city at large before we lose a potential suitor. And then I don't know if it's possible through a, I don't know if you can rezone to C4, but then set limitations on specific portions of that C4. I don't know if that's anything that's been discussed. If those specific limitations, 3 or 4 or 5, would then, would be suitable to the suitor or potential needs on that site. Thank you, and if we could answer any of those questions about potential employees or income in the area, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I got interrupted. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Is it possible the conference call is disrupting?
Yeah.
The speakers?
Because he is, you can see his mic moving.
Yeah.
And the speakers on.
Hey, Cody,
Yeah.
can you check in that settings again and hit the drop down for the,
Let's just ask the yes or no questions.
I actually had to do this on a call I was on.
12 to 15 full and part-time employees.
Is there a way to get those settings back up for the? You have them there.
Yeah.
So you're working on that line for planning and zoning, are we? The committee meetings. I'm just trying to figure out, because we didn't have any trouble in planning and zoning talking to them, but those aren't on the teleconference, are they?
Correct.
Okay, so that's kind of.
click the arrow by the mute button in the left corner. Bottom left.
Oh. You said by participant?
By the mute button, the up arrow.
Oh,
And select speaker. Try one of the other speakers.
Yeah.
So, can you hear? Can you say something? That wasn't it. Try the other one. Can you test one more time?
Hello, hello?
There we go.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, hey, no problem. Thank you for troubleshooting, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on that. Hearing through the speakers here, I don't know if I picked up every one of these questions that was coming through from the audience and as well as the council members, but I'll try to address them specifically, and if there is anything else that we're not covering, by all means.
Just quickly, you did type in the chat, just so the record has it. Employees 12 to 15, full and part-time, and then a national tenant, automotive parts repair, not service. Retailer, yeah.
And yes, not repair.
Yeah, all right.
No, and then the reason that I want to convey this information to you all is because I understand that there's some concerns about the intensity of use coming to this property. I will first point out that some of the, as you had stated, special uses that would be allowed within the C4 designation would require just that, special use permits, which would be left to the discretion of the city and its elected officials to be able to decipher. Now, that being said, what we are proposing is an allowed use without a special use permit. Frankly, our approach to developing this property is not one of highest intensity. It's one that relatively middle of the road. And what we do believe is a complementary use to the surrounding properties, which was correctly stated from the P&Z subcommittee meeting. We had pointed out that we do believe that this is the highest and best use, in addition to being in conformance with the surrounding properties, which are notably C4, despite the fact that they are not on a highway corridor. I just want to be able to extinguish some of those concerns because as we're looking at this and interpreting the code, we do believe that we fit squarely within the C4 designation. And furthermore, some of the design elements that would be required of us within that designation would not only allow for the enhancement of that surrounding area and complement the existing buffer between Colander Court and its residents, but we would also be in a position to support this property by creating jobs, having an economic tax impact on that, on the city and on the area. And to that note, we do believe that this is something that will complement the area rather than detract from it, and certainly more so than an unattended to property that nobody is necessarily looking at on a day-to-day basis. This offers the opportunity to transition successfully into a more conforming growth pattern in the area, one that has been clearly embraced by the community and its constituents, despite some of the challenges faced on previous zoning cases, such as Costco. It would seem to me that the growth pattern is speaking to that demand and acceptance of the commercial retail uses. And I would further point out that the OS zoning that currently exists on the property would be considered a spot zone, which has been clearly indicated by each of you. But the point that I want to make in saying that is that if it remains such, yes, it's true that it may ultimately be developed someday. But we're here today. We are prepared to move forward, provided we're able to receive the approvals that we are requesting. And we will be moving swiftly towards developing this property in a responsible and effective way. We have done this in a number of locations throughout the country. And to this day, I have yet to receive complaints from city as it relates to our retailers' operations. As I pointed out, national credit tenants are that because
of the stringent approach that they take to bringing quality service, responsible aesthetics, and conforming to different cities' requirements. And so I'm here to tell you that we're here to have a conversation with the city, with the community, with each of you, and try to have a constructive outcome for that. But without adjusting the zoning to allow for that, that conversation is no longer possible. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight, and again, if you have any questions that I haven't answered, by all means.
Josh, is this, so I'm looking at a new kind of diagram on the plan. Is that the building footprint that you expect, the 85 foot by 150? Because I don't believe I saw that at the committee level.
I do not know what you are looking at currently.
That's not that.
I think those are the dimensions of the lot.
No,
there's a blue square with a
footprint. I'm sure you probably can't see this here.
I'm afraid not, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I could walk it all the way up to the camera, but I don't think it's tall enough. But it's not.
Well, tell me again, is this something that you're looking at on this particular parcel that would be?
Yes. It's showing it's showing it looks like a blue square, kind of an outline of the building in the northwest corner of the property.
And it looks like it's also giving me distances from the nearest residence, which kind of increases the. I know that obviously if it gets rezoned, you don't necessarily have to follow these plans, but it looks like it's purposely giving me distance of the nearest houses too. So I don't know if you.
You're correctly stating, and without seeing that, it sounded like you said 110 by 85. Is that correct?
185 by 150.
That would be larger than the type of footprint that I would expect to see on this property, frankly. Substantial. That being said, I mean, I don't know exactly what you're looking at, so it's difficult for me to respond based on that technical element. What I can tell you is that a standard prototype of what we would be requesting following approval would probably fall into the category between 85 by 85 to closer to 85 by 110. So we're looking at between 7,000 and roughly 8,500 square feet for a building footprint. We often operate with between 29 and 35 parking stalls, depending on code requirements. And again, just to kind of speak to what I had said previously, this is a fairly middle of the road, not especially contentious when it comes down to the use, often complementary to other retail uses in the area. And I wish I had exactly what you had in front of you, because I could probably illustrate a little bit further detail here. But
prepared by the planning administrator, I think it was attempting to show the location and the distance from properties.
Mr. Mayor, that's the actual building, as the planning and zoning administrator understood it. That blue box is the actual building.
Well, Josh just said the buildings are typically those dimensions.
This is too big.
Yeah, so.
Well, if you include the parking lot, probably.
And as far as the building orientation, I mean, there are design standards that fall within the city code for civil and site design, of course, and we would most obviously be subject to design and aesthetic standards. We do have the latitude to address some of the concerns coming from the residential side, as we had pointed out in our voluntary community meeting when they had provided us with their letter of opposition, which, rather than looking at it as an opposing force, to me, the way that I read into that was, you're showing me some challenges and objectives, and none of them were really outside the ballpark of what we would typically encounter or try and find solutions to.
Josh,
so I just want to...
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you can't see, but Bob Mack has come to the podium and will basically explain some of the things I think will clarify some of the issues.
Can I read what Brody wrote just for that?
By all means, thank you.
Yeah, hold on a second.
So I asked Brody is the blue of building footprint, sent him a picture of this, and he said it's just a theoretical building footprint of what they might build. I believe it's a lot bigger than they would actually build.
This is what he said, but I'm not sure that adds very much clarification, and we didn't get it to Josh, so that is something we're gonna talk about.
May I?
Yes, you may, sir.
My name is Robert Mack. I'm with the real estate firm Signature Associates, 4 Seagate, Suite 608, Toledo, Ohio, 43604. I've been retained by Black Diamond Landscape to assist them in selling this property over the last few years. And the zoning certainly has been a hindrance to our efforts because, well, especially during COVID, there's really not a whole lot of activity, but we're in the aftermath of COVID. We have been able to procure this user, which seems to be middle of the road in your C4, nothing extreme. And the drawing that I think Brody put together with the measurements, the comment was made that the use would be up as near as 120 feet from the homes on Calendar Court. Brody was trying to say on that drawing that it's more than twice that amount, because if you're a retailer, your interest would be having as, you know, all your building as close to Route 25 as possible. And so their parking field would be towards the west, and that would of course keep the highest level of commercial use as far away from the residential component. And I would agree with everybody else that said that the current zoning on this piece, just like the property that I'm involved with on Williams Road that you did just rezone, is a prime example of spot zoning. We're just asking to get the zoning that surrounds this piece. And for example, the bank that's going in across the street, they needed C4 zoning. And they're on a Costco outlot or inlot, whatever you want to call it. They too do not have a curb cut on Echo Junction because they're trying to minimize their impact. Just like these folks are not requesting a curb cut on Echo Junction. Keep in mind that somebody else could come along in a C1, C2, and you know, it's a parcel, and they would want access to the public right of way. And so they may or may not use the existing curb cut at the light. These people are going to continue to, that's the only access they'll have is through that curb cut that's already there at a light. Does that clear up some things?
Yeah, very helpful, thank you. Now why, and I don't have the list in front of me, so I apologize, but I would imagine a retail store would fall into like a C1, C2, or C3 as opposed to C4. And I'm sorry if I'm incorrect on that, I don't know it, but why exactly are you we applying for a C4 rather than one of those if the potential suitor falls into one of those?
I'm not completely familiar with the code, but C1, C2, those are generally like maybe an optical shop or something, just a little less traffic. And this would be like about as general of retailing as you could get.
Let me clarify, retail business less than 60,000 square feet is permitted in both C3 and C4. And if it's more than 60,000, it's a special approval use in both C3 and C4. I assume this would be a retail business.
It is a retail business, and I think the drawing, the blue spot that Brody made was an overstatement of the footprint of the building.
And I couldn't do the math when Josh gave me the dimensions quickly enough to compute what that square footage is.
12,750 square feet.
Well, is it 12,000?
12,700.
Okay. So that would be a permitted use, but either in C3 or C4.
I think it's also permitted in C2.
Yes,
sure.
correct. See, we know here tonight more than we did at the committee. I don't know if we perceived at night or something at the committee, but we were not told that night. We were told we couldn't know the name of the tenant, and I fully understand that. We didn't have any information at all regarding the potential use. So as I look at this, my initial reaction is if it's likely to be fall into those two categories, why C4 as opposed to consider C3 or potentially C2
or C1.
Yeah, C1, it's not permitted or special approval use in C1. C1's the downtown. No.
Neighborhood commercial.
Oh, C2 is central business, that's right.
So, Mr. Chairman, you're asking whether it should go back to committee, and I would kind of like it to, because I think there's new information here that we can probably build off of also, moving forward. I just don't know if we're in that position tonight, so.
I would tend to agree that when we get this back, the depiction of what could be building footprint, you know, that's probably not accurate, and Brody conceded it wasn't. He was just, taking a ballpark stab of what it would be. It sounds like it's much larger than it would be. Josh doesn't have this map in front of him that we're all looking at. And maybe what could come back to the committee would be a depiction of Josh, if you could, your best, or Bob, whoever's working on this, your best estimate of where the building would be located, what the dimensions would be. The goal is their representation as an automotive parts retailer. And I guess we'll consider the project in those terms. That's at least my thought.
All right, so we have a pending.
So real quick, I just want to give some clarification on the zoning uses. If it was to go to, let's say, a C1, the retail business is not part of the C1 zone.
Right.
So it's very limited in C1. I think it's actually almost more limited than what office space is in this group.
Pretty limited. Farm markets and stands, animal services, outdoor and indoor. The gym and fitness facility.
How big is it?
The neighborhood business, less than 10,000 square feet. Offices and banks, personal services, repair services.
Could this be permitted C3 with a special use?
No, it would be, if it's 12,000 square feet, it would be permitted. It would be a special.
Josh, can you tell us if it's over or under 12,000 square feet? Because I don't know the answer.
I can tell you that it would be under 12,000 square feet. And if I may, part of the reason that we were attracted to C4 designation, often when we're looking at some of the planning and land use elements to any given parcel and whether or not it's viable, and certainly whether or not it would be conforming to what we need to accomplish, we look at the surrounding uses, the overall fabric of what's occurring and what has occurred in recent times. And when looking at this parcel, we are looking at abundance of C4 highway. And so, we can look at the details of that definition and look at the words word for word, but it's, from our interpretation, we see a land use pattern that exemplifies C4 highway being a corridor, if you will, and within that you would find a conforming use of C4 rather than an additional spot zone of C2 or 3. That's not to say you couldn't find a way of making it happen. It's just more a matter of looking at the conforming approach to that pattern so that we can increase our viability for success within that framework. So more than anything, we're looking at the existing pattern of what exists in Harrisburg today and where that's been coming from and where it's possibly going. So we're not looking at it in terms of how intensified can replace the land use. It has more to do with what's conforming and applicable to what we are desiring to do. And so as I have represented, we do intend to take a fairly middle of the road approach as it relates to that intensity while staying within the conformance of that. And just clarifying that statement that was made regarding C3 plus special use, we do also want to avoid any kind of special use permitting if possible. I mean, we're more than happy to follow the guidelines of the city to the T. We just want to avoid that type of approach to it if we can, in the spirit of saving time and getting this development to market. One of our tenets in this at this company is to be first and to be fast. And persist. And so very often when we're approaching these projects, we're under a fairly tight timeline to do just that and to perform within that construct. And so in looking at the zoning, looking what our available options were we did believe that C4 was in fact the highest and best use, and one that would facilitate both the responsible economic growth of the city while facilitating us the fabric to try to work with them.
Well, I had two reactions to that, Josh. One is that your client wants to be first and be fast. Well, if they're an automotive parts retailer, they're not first. We already have that in common. And I'm a little surprised at your reluctance. I know generally you don't like special approval use zoning, but yet I've heard you say a couple times that you want to work with the city and the nearby residents as to what the site looks like. You know, and that gets into things like parking, where the building sits, what you do with the parking lot. And that's the typical stuff that we do on a special approval use. So I'm now a bit confused as to whether you're willing to do that or not.
Well, I don't see those things in conflict, frankly. I mean, we had started this process a number of months ago. In fact, we had preceded the application and request for rezone a few months ahead of time to provide the community with the opportunity to speak to us directly. We welcome a public forum, we welcome public hearings, and have tried to take a responsible approach to participating and creating that that platform for others to be heard. And it sounds to me like the most vocal people regarding this project are the residents adjacent to the site. And we've done everything that we can to speak very clearly and specifically to the concerns that they've represented and provide solutions to those concerns. So while I agree with your perspective on that, I would respectfully state that we have been doing all that we can to incorporate those into our project considerations while also concurrently progressing the project towards an actual approval. And at the end of the day, we can discuss all the options and limitations and considerations, but we still, at the end of the day, do need to have choices made and certainly need approvals in order to move forward. And furthermore, you know, we also have to be respectful of the way that the economics work behind these projects and the way that time can place limitations upon those. So just like office space maybe was a viable approach to using this property 10 years ago or 5 years ago even, it is no longer the case now. And it is in part due to the market forces that we are subject to. And while it is first and foremost important to know where your constituents lie in terms of their concerns, it's equally as important for us to be respectful of our constituents and what we're needing to hold in balance. And that's why I would point out that, you know, part of the zoning, the underlying narrative of each zoning code is what we're addressing today. We're requesting that adjustment, and I will continue to represent the fact that we are open and considerate to the voice of the people in the community as well as in the city. And we will, provided we are able to move forward on this, we will continue to be receptive to that and incorporate anything that we can.
Well, whether it goes back to committee or not, Josh, I can tell you, we'll move expeditiously. You're probably not surprised. You're not the first developer who came through and said time is of the essence. We deal with that, we understand that, we respect that, and we're trying to address it. We don't want to deny a business a legitimate opportunity if it fits in our community. So we'll do what we can in that regard. I made the motion for passage. Tom, are you a parliamentarian? Can I withdraw it and move to table?
I think we had this discussion. I think you actually can withdraw it because you're the one who moved forward, and there's been no vote taken. So you want no action on it, and then should we go back to committee then? This would be a zoning issue. There would need to be public notice and all of that. So I guess I'm not sure when your next meeting would be.
I don't think there needs to be a new public notice.
Well, I don't know that.
I guess what additional information are we hoping to get at the table?
I'd like to have a discussion with the neighbors in a forum where you can really have a discussion like this about how this new use is going to work. You know, council isn't really amenable to become a committee.
Yeah.
And we've been furnished new information tonight. I'd like to have Josh look at the map that Brody did and have them develop a better depiction of where the building will be. If assuming this project goes forward, we got to keep in mind too, although Josh has a client who may have a very specific project idea, once it owns zoning, whatever's in there will go out of business. And then we're left with a shell, and you're left with the full array of C4 uses. I think we got to think about that and think further whether it can work in a different zoning category. If we vote tonight, I'm voting C4 now.
Well, okay, would the council to expedite it for the applicants' courtesy, we can find out, talk to Brody and see if there needs to be, do we have to go back to the start for the application process, the public notice process, or do we just can't go back to committee? I don't know the answer to that. And we'll,
So I would just, if you don't mind, if I jump in real quick, if this is going to get tabled, I would prefer to see if we could have something done by the October 5th meeting within 2 weeks. I don't know if planning and zoning committee.
Well, there might need to be public notice because you're changing the zoning.
Well, that don't know if that can necessarily change it at this point. It's more of a conversation.
Well, yeah, but you have various issues to move it along, I would think, even if you're having a conversation or something. If council wants to meet with the applicant first to kind of sort out what zoning is appropriate, maybe that's something.
I would like to try to put a couple, to move this along as quickly as possible instead of waiting to the next planning and zoning committee. If there's another change and we have to go through this public hearing request, I don't want to hold this up any further. If it's, let's say C2 is the one that comes as a recommendation, we have to go. I'm not sure exactly what the process is. I'm looking at a law director on that, but.
Well, and I think if we get an application for C4 zoning and we put it through the hearing process, I would think we can consider other zoning options. So the purpose of the notice is to put people on notice. Hey, there might be a change here of some sort. And if it can move as quickly as to bring it back to council on October 5th, is that the date?
That would be the next one.
Yeah, we can do that.
Because I mean, I'm still comfortable voting today, but I don't think you're the minority in that one.
The law director's at the dais. Josh, as you know, the law director's at, we can't see that, so go ahead.
I would believe that this was presented as a C4 zoning amendment.
You have to turn it down.
And if you wish to have it be a C something else, it needs to go back through all of the steps and processes. I don't believe that it can be changed at this stage in the process so that everybody has noticed that you're going to do it as a C2. It goes to commission, it goes to public hearing, it comes back before city council. So I just want everybody to be aware that if the decision is that you would prefer it to be a C1 or a C2 rather than a C4, my understanding is that that will have to go back to commission, committee, and then city council.
Well, and what I'd do is I'd ask you to take a little deeper dive on that case and see what your final conclusion is. We're not asking you to shoot for the It would be fair to the applicant or us or you, so I'd ask that you dig into it and see what you think is right.
I think before we vote, I would like one thing, just, and I appreciate everything. I still, it's not going to change necessarily your vote, Tim, but I would like if we could project the zoning map on one of these so you can see kind of the parcel we're looking at in the consortium of things and why. I know Jan's question was based on the definition of what C4 highway is, and I know Brody was pretty quick to squash that at the committee meeting to say that's not really the intent of that definition. But just real quick on looking at that map and then where the C2 and C3 are versus the C4 and what the current parcel is with the office and service, I think it's worth looking at because that's when I was thinking about it. That's kind of what got me where I was, and I was not for the rezoning of this. So you'll see the C2 basically is all the downtown area. The C3 is your, you know, your Churchill's, that shopping mall.
Kroger, C3.
So yeah, when you put the cursor on, right, where we're talking about.
So this is the OS right here. And C4 is surrounded by.
And it's important to note that that little cul-de-sac, I know it looks very similar color, is actually, I think it's multi-family. Correct. Which is kind of hard to interpret there, but there is residential. There. But all the surrounding area is C4, which is why I believe in when he says we're looking at this when we do that application. And then I think the question becomes at the committee level, if we're trying to drive a C2 and C3, does that really make sense with what we got? That's just my thought, and kind of what changed my mind for putting this through. Because I know had it been C2 or C3, my recommendation would have been to pass this. So.
Okay, so any other discussion?
I'd like to know why, there's a reason why this retail facility cannot work in a C3? Why we cannot?
It can, I think.
So
Okay, then
just
why,
so you know,
why aren't they applying for C3 then?
I think because they looked at our zoning map is basically what they're telling us, and it's a spot zoning. They're trying to make it fit with what looks like our plan is.
So if I can answer, and I don't want to necessarily answer for them, but historically what we've done in our zoning changes is typically with the zoning maps and they have to change with something similar to what's around it. We look at the CAD facility down there in the bottom left corner, that's all purple. That was part of the planned business park. When they came in to utilize it, it needed to be changed to industrial, which was a zone across the street. From my understanding and how I would support zoning changes, it has to be similar to what's around it. And so that's one of the reasons why it seems to fit with the zoning that's around it. And my concern is that we continue to move forward with the change to C2, C1, or C3. It's not necessarily a match to the uses that are already currently around it, and would be still considered a spot zoning at that point. So that's my feelings on, or my belief on that.
As I said the other,
yes.
As I mentioned the other night, we can't recreate this history either, but just north where Black Diamond is, because typically you're going from C4 to C3 to C2 to lighten the density or what actually is occurring. Somewhere along the line, that Black Diamond section, even though it was a buffer between C4 and the residential area, was created. So it's just interesting that we put that C4 right next to the residential area, and of course the reason we're struggling with C4 now is the residential area. So the softening of a C3 just seems to make a little bit of sense, if it's viable.
All right, any other questions?
Yes.
Comments?
Yes, I would say what I said before. The committee had recommended 3-0 to say no on this project. My comments are that I'm just not for the current zoning that's being proposed.
Okay, so just so Josh understands, well, Tim, what is your preference as the person who's introduced it? Are you intending to just withdraw it?
Yeah, I feel I already did.
Okay, all right.
I'll withdraw my motion.
All right, so just so Josh understands, there's no action going to be taken tonight. No action going to be taken tonight, and it'll go back then. The administration will do some research on what steps have to be done if the zoning is going to be changed. The possibility of C4 is still on the table, although we've had lots of discussion about that, but then that could just come back up. And then we'll get that information out to everybody as soon as possible. We'll get Josh this diagram that was provided to council this evening. And then if steps need to be taken, we will let everybody know. You guys and Josh as well.
I do have a text from Brody, and I think this will be helpful for council. He said if we send it back to committee, there's no notice requirements.
Okay.
And I did not clarify whether that includes amending.
Well, yeah, I think we're just, it's kind of a I think we need a formal legal opinion because I think it does matter if we're changing the zoning, but we better just make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's on that.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
I texted Brody, he said if we just don't take no action, it goes back to committee, there's not notice requirements for like what would be with the original zoning application, rezoning.
I would agree with that for the original C4.
Well, right, but that doesn't resolve our question, right?
That doesn't resolve our question, but I agree with that for the
Well,
C4.
right, but that's what I just said. I said, right, C5 or C4 is still on the table. And if it has to go back, it has to go back. Okay, Josh, do you understand that muddle mess we've created? Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, yes.
All right.
Yeah, and we can certainly follow up on the timeline on that, but it sounds to me like there would be a subcommittee in early October, or we would be reconvening at full council in early October.
Probably probably back to the committee level, back to the planning and zoning committee for guidance, and by then we'll have a kind of a guideline, a timeline, if there are other changes to the zoning code.
If it's all right, would it be reasonable to see if the planning and zoning committee could potentially schedule a special meeting now if it has to be canceled if we find something else out? I think that would be helpful to give some sort of, at least a tentative timeline for the property owner, or for the property owners with potential use. And it's up to the committee on that. I don't want to put any pressure, but.
Well, do you guys usually meet before the second council meeting?
Yeah, but we would not meet before the first council. We would regularly meet before the second council.
But if there's a way to expedite it, it would be.
But whether we need a public hearing is really important.
Right. Yeah.
With regards to the time.
So what's be right? I agree.
We need to know that before.
We're also making the assumption that they want to amend their application, though, because it's
True.
their application to do what they want, I guess.
Let's get some facts, and then if we need to set a planning and zoning feels a need to have an additional meeting, a special meeting. Tim has done this before, and we will get council to do that. Okay?
We can coordinate by email and pick a date. We'll obviously be coordinating with Josh and Pete on behalf of the church.
And we'll try to make sure the lights turned on. So we'll have that going for us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Josh. We appreciate your patience, and we appreciate all the residents coming out as well. We'll keep contact person, everybody informed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Either someone for me or someone. Okay.
Tim, do you have anything else? Those are the
I don't think so.
Okay.
I do have a question for Tim. I mean, are we talking about a committee of the whole on the land use plan?
We are still in discussion with that. We don't have a date yet. Yes, we are still working on that for all of you. And as soon as we have a date, we will get that to you, but it's still being worked out with the consultant and the representatives from the Heights to come up with a coordinated date. So yes, we are still working on that.
Okay.
That's my answer.
Okay, that's thank you. Thank you.
All right. That's the last time we ever do that. Finance and economic development. Oh, well, first, yeah, go ahead. Guy, you started this.
Hi, yeah, just before Tim wrapped up there, the planning and zoning portion, I just wanted to indicate if I could. At the planning and zoning meeting, there wasn't quite a summary. The summary included Paul Belize and his statements. There were some other speakers, including myself. I did indicate that there were some buffering issues along that commercial corridor with the residents of Perrysburg Heights already that could be looked at if someone would. And then I provided some information. I was just kind of responding about an article. I just wanted to indicate the information that I provided was an 2007 article by Joe Vard, and I wanted to get the names right if I could. Pete Gwynn was the law director here at the time, and then Rick Thielen. And then their I went back and looked at the meeting overall, and there was some scoffing, I guess. All I was trying to do was respond that over time the residents of the community have had all these different statements made to them by public officials. So another one, there was some scoffing that I went to 07 and it was 14 years and it hadn't happened. There's other instances. In 13, the then mayor said the same thing. Perrysburg was actively, wanting to make that part of the Heights part of the community, that they were trying to annex. Before the end of that meeting, there was some just commentary. Something that was mentioned was that the consultant was entirely surprised or shocked when they heard feedback on the situation. And the statement was made that he was shocked because it accomplished what they want. So I wasn't quite sure hearing that, who was they? And it sounded like it went on further to say that the rezoning accomplished what they want. And that's kind of the issue that we had and we're trying to bring up, that the zoning's residential, and a change to mixed use would then take parcels or take residential zoning away from that neighborhood. And that over time, that, for instance, Rick Thielen was one that said the neighborhood should be preserved, and that the residents can count on that whenever there is an eventual annexation, or when that takes place, the residents can count on it being residential zoning for as long as they like. So I was trying to go back, and there's another Matt Thompson article in 13 that has the mayor making additional statements, just kind of to allow the city to see that it's not paranoia. It's all these kind of, yeah, we're going to annex you, no, we're not. Yeah, we're going to, no, we're not. Now we're going to use the zoning to accomplish what we want by adding in 40% commercial and saying it's still, residential. So I just wanted to say that, and there were some other speakers. So if you all got a chance to go back and look at the meeting and see those, appreciate that. And any of the buffer concerns, if there's some type of solution we could work on there, that would be grateful. Thank you.
All right. Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Finance and Economic Development Committee met on September 14th, 2021. The meeting was called to order at 5:36 p.m. by Chairman Mark Weber. Committee members present were Deborah Bourne, myself, and Tim McCarthy. Also present were Bridget Cabot, City Administrator, Kate Sandretto, Law Director, Amber Rathburn, Finance Director, and Steve Bronder, Income Tax Commissioner. There were no objections to the minutes, and they were approved. The appointment of Jason.
Mr. Chairman, I think I said present. Ask that question.
And there were no objections.
Present means I didn't vote on the radio.
Okay, but the minutes were approved.
So 20202, and then a present.
Right.
Okay.
I thank Mr. Daniels for his willingness the appointment of Jason Daniels. I thank Mr. Daniels for his willingness to serve on the Wake Public Library Board. Mr. Daniels stated that he wants to serve the community through the library. Ms. Bourne said she thinks that he will bring a good perspective to the board as a small business owner. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend Mr. Daniels' appointment, which went through tonight. ProMedica Jobs Grant Credit. Glenn Grisdale, the city's economic development consultant, spoke on the ProMedica Ambulatory and Dispatch Facility project. It is a good adaptive reuse project, and that they do not plan on expanding the existing footprint. Andrea Donahue and Eric Holzman of ProMedica are requesting a jobs grant to help offset the renovation costs. This project is at the former Ohio Cat building at 25970 North Dixie Highway. They anticipate creating 66 full-time and 17 part-time jobs with a payroll of about $3.5 million starting in 2023. When the project is at full capacity, ProMedica would be eligible for a refund of $17,500 per year for the duration of the 5-year grant period. Ms. Bourne stated she is pleased with the jobs and money ProMedica will be bringing in. Mr. McCarthy asked if they will still make the December 1st date. And Mr. Holtzman stated that design work is already underway and that they should be in good shape for that date. Ms. Donahue said that they are very excited and it is a great location. Mr. Holtzman explained that the vehicles will check out at the building of the beginning of the shift, which means the ambulances should be leaving the facility with lights and sirens on. The committee agreed 3-0 to forward this to City Council. The CRA application of Toledo Hospital and ProMedica, Mr. Grisdale stated that if the 80,000 square foot building housing multi-specialty practices, including a cancer center, gets approved for a CRA, ProMedica will be assigning the CRA agreement, responsibilities, and benefits to a private sector party in the near future. Mr. Grisdale stated that they are requesting 100% 10-year abatement. This project will create 57 or more full-time positions, as well as retain 59 full-time employees currently located in Perrysburg, meaning it has a job retention component. He added that if they move forward with the CRA, they will rescind the jobs grant request approved last month. Ms. Robin Whitney of ProMedica stated that the cancer center currently at McLaren St. Luke's will be relocating to Perrysburg in this building. Ms. Bourne said that it is really great for the community and asked if they are going to use LEED materials again. Ms. Whitney said that they will be following their general guidelines and will also make sure it is very walkable. Some landscaping and enhancing the water feature that is there. I said that is a great fit for the area to expand on what they already have there. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend approval of the CRA application. I asked Mr. Grisdale what other types of incentives there are out there for small businesses. Mr. Grisdale listed off incentives including quality of life programs, high design guidelines, CRA programs, revolving loan fund program, and state programs. I also had questions about income tax and confirmed we have 13 active CRAs currently. Ms. Sandretto asked Mr. Grisdale if he is going to draft the resolutions, which he will. On the subject of additional sidewalks, this is something that came to the Finance Committee because we wanted to get it to the council before the Service Committee had a chance to meet, because they're meeting after tonight's meeting. So Ms. Sandretto explained that Resolution 9/2021 awarded a bid and agreement in an amount not to exceed $100,000 with M&M Foamworks LLC for the sidewalk lifting and repair portion of the 2021 sidewalk program. The original budget for the entire project was $200,000, of which $125,000 has been allocated. But at this time, the Public Service is requesting to amend the agreement with M&M Foamworks to add an additional $50,000 to continue the repair and lifting portion. Ms. Cabot stated that in the next year's budget is another $200,000 for sidewalks, and that the money is going much further for lift and repair than it has ever before. Ms. Bourne asked Ms. Sandretto where M&M is located. Mr. Bronder said that they're in Perrysburg Township. The committee agreed 3-0 to forward this to City Council. And this will be an emergency measure because of the fact that they're here working now and we want to keep the job moving. Approval of code updates. Ms. Sandretto stated that every year numerous code changes are presented and passed, which are then sent to the company that keeps our code updated. The legislation accepting these changes was missed in 2020 and for the 2019 code changes. There is also proposed legislation to approve the 2020 code changes, so that's why there'll be two being introduced tonight. Ms. Sandretto asked that these be passed as an emergency. The committee agreed 3-0 to forward this to council. Accepting the certificate of estimated revenues from the county budget, Ms. Rathburn explained that the Wood County Budget Commission gave the city estimates for what they will get in real estate taxes in 2022. She asked that this be passed as an emergency because it is due back to the county by the end of September. The committee agreed 3-0 to forward this to City Council. For our new financial software, Ms. Rathburn reported that representatives from all the departments sat through demos of 3 different financial software systems. Ms. Rathburn explained that a request for proposals was done and we received 5 responses back. Software Solutions was selected based on a ranking of qualifications. CMI, the firm that provides our current software, will not support our current software after July of 2023. So Ms. Rathburn stated that with the new software, we'll be able to see real-time information, eliminate paper as is cloud-based. Ms. Cabot added that every department will use this to manage their budgets. I asked about it price-wise compared to the others, and Ms. Cabot stated that it was right in the middle of the pack, with some lower, some higher, but definitely is the best fit. So the committee agreed 3-0 to forward this to the City Council. The Finance Director's report, the committee reviewed the expenditures over $5,000 in credit card bills for August. Ms. Bourne asked about United Healthcare, and Ms. Cabot explained that those are employee health care claims, that United Healthcare is our health insurance provider. Ms. Bourne also asked about the Dollar General charge of $18.95 for cat food. Ms. Cabot stated that the food is for animals that we are holding and waiting for its owner to retrieve them. Ms. Bourne asked if we will be getting an animal control officer. Ms. Cabot responded no, because the police chief determined we do not need one. I asked about NECO, N-E-C-O. Ms. Cabot explained that it's a mobile data collector and will allow us to build a better GIS layer. Ms. Bourne asked how much was spent on the 2 concrete pads at Riverside Park. And I stated I knew that the Gold Star Memorial pad, which has nothing really connection with the city, was 100% donated by Lathrop, Labor and Materials. And Ms. Cabot will ask the service director, who's in charge of that project, about the other pad. Ms. Rathburn reported that the balance in the health insurance fund as of August 31st was $170,162.25. She stated they are still expecting some large claims, but said that we are doing quite well with the claims and is happy with where we are right now. In the tax commissioner's report, Mr. Bronder stated that we collected $1.4 million in August of 2021, noting that withholding was up. Overall, our year-to-date is $15.5 million. Ms. Bourne asked about individual payments being down 64%, and Mr. Bronder stated that it's due to the shift in the due date. Mr. McCarthy asked if 2021 processing will be a manageable workload for his staff. Mr. Bronder thinks there will be more activity, but as long as they have a full staff, they should be able to do it. There being no further business, the meeting was adjourned at 6:47, and I will move forward this legislation. I'm going to separate the sidewalk and the software resolutions, and if there are no objections, I'd like to introduce the county auditor and code update ordinances together, since they're more of a housekeeping matter. And then I'll separate the 2 pro-medical ordinances. That's all right. So I would like to introduce Resolution 54-2021 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and to dispense with the 2nd and 3rd readings.
Second?
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 54-2021, a resolution amending Resolution 9-2021 and authorizing change order number 1 to the agreement in an amount not to exceed $50,000 for additional lifting and repair portion of the 2021 sidewalk program and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 54-2021 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to introduce Resolution 55-2021 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the 2nd and 3rd readings.
Second?
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 55-2021. A resolution authorizing an agreement with Software Solutions for the purchase and installation of new financial software for the City of Perrysburg, Department of Finance, and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 55-2021 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
All right. I would like to introduce ordinances 46, 47, and 48, 2021, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for their readings and number by number and title only, and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Ordinance 46, 2021, accepting amounts and rates determined by the Budget Commission of Wood County, Ohio to authorize necessary tax levies and certify them to the county auditor and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 47, 2021, to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances and parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances to provide for the adoption and the publication of new matter in the updated and revised codified ordinances, to repeal ordinance in conflict therewithin from 2019 and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 48, 2021, to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances, to provide for the adoption of publication of new materials in the updated and revised codified ordinances, to repeal ordinances in conflict therewith from 2020 and declaring an emergency.
I move that ordinances 46, 47, and 48-2021 be passed as emergency measures.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Moving on, I would like to introduce ordinance 49-2021 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Ordinance 49, 2021, authorizing all actions necessary to enter into a community reinvestment area agreement with the Toledo Hospital and ProMedica Health System, Inc., and declaring an emergency.
I move that ordinance 49-2021 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second.
Discussion.
Just one quick question here, if I remember correctly, the CRAs, the assessments, I'm going up over here, make sure I explain it, for the school levies, is that part of this, or is that something that they have to negotiate separately with the schools?
They're still required to pay the schools.
And that's what I just wanted to clarify on that one, so I know that question will come up. Thank you.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Last one. I would like to introduce ordinance 50-2021 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Ordinance 50, 2021, authorizing a job creation grant for ProMedica Health System, Inc., and declaring an emergency.
I move that ordinance 50-2021 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Our next meeting is next Tuesday, Tuesday, October 12th at 5:30 p.m. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Safety Committee did not meet. Our next scheduled meeting is the 28th of September at 6 p.m.
Recreation. Thank you. Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no report. Our next scheduled meeting is for the second Tuesday in October, which will be October 12th at 6:30 p.m.
Zoning, public utilities.
Personnel.
I couldn't go see that on our personnel.
All right, I have no report, but I do have some legislation to introduce for the third readings. So at this time, I'd like to introduce ordinance 41, 2021, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only.
Second. Roll call.
Ms. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Matroni. Yes. Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. Webb.
Yes.
Ordinance 41, 2021, amending codified ordinance to 20.07 of the City of Perrysburg codified ordinances, codified by ordinance 57, 2017, and passed on August 1st, 2017.
Move that ordinance 41-2021 be passed.
Second.
Discussion?
Wait, are we passing it? Or, no, it is requested here, I guess.
I have some discussion on both ordinances 41 and 42.
Well, let's just
Voting now.
do, okay.
Simply because I am uncomfortable with giving myself a raise, and I did not do this position for the money, I did it for the service. So I will be voting no on both of those ordinances.
I don't think we're giving ourselves a raise here.
So I guess what, I was the one that brought this to the committee level. I think it makes a lot of sense to tie our wages. I really didn't focus. It is a slight increase. I want that to be very clear. That was not my intent behind proposing this change. I thought it made a lot of sense to tie council's wage to the minimum requirement to OPER's standard. That's the intent behind the legislation. It's not to give myself a raise, but I certainly appreciate anybody that feels different about that.
Well, just to be clear, this doesn't become effective
For our terms.
for our term, so just to be clear, you're not giving yourself a raise.
Correct, right, or potential on re-election if I were to run for that, or anybody up here that's currently running for re-election. Honestly, I don't even know what they meant, so it'd be effective January 1, 2020.
So that's what affected the one runner. Only people running now.
Yes.
People who are currently do not get a raise in the middle of their term.
Correct.
If you don't mind, I want to inject in a couple of things here. I personally don't plan to vote for this, and it's just more of a consistency with how I've acted in the past on these. However, I do want to make a point that this again wouldn't affect me, and it seems almost self-serving. Like I mentioned this, but with the president of council, there are additional duties that additional meetings that president of council is required to attend, and in the past, it's always been a.
You are the only participant in the conference.
Thank you.
Please press any key on your keypad to remain in the conference.
Everyone started talking, so that's always fun. With that, I don't think I saw anything that said that a president of council, so for a future president of council, and again, this wouldn't affect me and my term if this passes. It doesn't have that additional income for the additional meetings that they have to attend. I would recommend that if this does pass, that something similar would be included as how it currently is, even if that's an extra 500, however that works out.
I thought it did. I
didn't see that.
I believe that was in the discussion.
I'm pretty sure that the president council did have additional.
It was never requested that that be added officially, so it was not added. It was not, it was part of the discussion, but at no point was it asked that that language be changed in the last two readings.
I agree with Mr. Smith.
I agree. So
You are alone in the conference.
I think what
You'll be
I'll
disconnected.
do is, I think it's wise to just I guess we're on our third reading. Do we have to act on our third reading?
You can table
Can we
it.
amend it?
You can table it, or you can amend it. You can amend it. You can make a motion to amend.
So I think what I would do is just stick with the traditional sense that my intent here, and this is an oversight, I should have gotten to this last meeting, that there be an amendment that includes that the president of council gets the OPERS minimum plus $500.
Would you like to take the provided, however, the president of council shall be paid $500 more per year payable in 12 equal monthly installments, and add that to the section 1?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you're making that motion to strike some of the language, then add the new language that was just discussed.
I think it's just additional language.
I don't think it's striking, I think it's just additional. He's correct. Would you like?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a pending ordinance, but we also have a motion. So the motion is now been moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
This is just to add the language not to approve the ordinance itself.
Correct.
Correct.
I just want to make that clear for everybody.
All right. Hearing none, roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
No.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Okay. Now back to the ordinance that's being discussed. Are we done with discussion on that?
I think we're going down the line.
It was
Is
just
that-
anything, but I was planning to say something myself.
Well, do you want to add anything?
No, that's really what I had to say. I think the first time around I spoke.
Okay.
We missed that in the personnel committee, so thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, roll call.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne.
No.
Okay. With that, I'd like to introduce ordinance 42-2021. That will be suspended to allow number and title only.
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Ordinance 42, 2021, amending codified ordinance 230.01 of the City of Perrysburg codified ordinances, codified by ordinance 93, 2008, and passed on July 8, 2008.
Okay, I move that ordinance 42-2021 be passed.
Second.
Discussion.
So just a couple of questions here. When the compensation was determined, how was that number come up with again?
We looked at the surrounding jurisdictions. I will say this was something that kind of came up with the wage study. We were looking at comparable positions across the board. I asked that the mayor and council wages be included. We reviewed those. There's some higher, some lower. I believe we're right in the middle, and this keeps us there.
Any others?
I think the reason I thought it was an appropriate time, I think we have an expectation of accountability for our elected officials, specifically the mayor. And I didn't think our wage necessarily reflected it. It was time to revisit that wage. And this is where we ended up.
I appreciate it. And again, with just my consistency, what I would say in the past, this was brought up to be a potential addition to the charter a few years ago. I would prefer to see something like that involve our charter as that's reviewed every 10 years, where those can potentially change within a 10-year period. And it goes up to a vote for the citizens, which is why I just personally, just from consistency's sake, I just can't support us passing this. I'd rather see that to a vote of the people. However, I do agree that even the mayor is underpaid for the amount of work that he has to do into this, as well as for all the work that all the council members put into this. We're definitely probably on a per hour basis are well under what we put into it. But that's what we all sign up for, knowing that going in. I know this isn't going to affect our current mayor or his next term, but just again, want to keep that in mind as something as a conversation that could be potentially had in the charter at the next charter review.
I have some discussion. I would echo some of what Jonathan said. I appreciate his thoughts. So thank you.
Hearing no other discussion, roll call.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
No.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes. All right, and that's the end of my report. Next meeting is September 28th at 5 p.m.
Thank you. All right, now, service. Here we utilities.
I was just mad at me because I voted no. I do not have a report, but I can tell you I do like the view up on the screen over here. I just imagine myself sitting on a beach, maybe sipping a margarita or something as we're having our meeting. Our next scheduled meeting is going to be tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. and I do not have anything else to add. That would be wonderful.
Water laughing. All right, service committee.
Yes, no report. Our next meeting is tomorrow at 5:30.
Thank you very much. Any other business come before this council?
Just real quick, couple things. One, what's our timeline on being able to live stream this on our YouTube channel? I know I keep asking, but I kind of want to harp until it's done.
I can talk to our IT, but we're currently not set up, I believe, in this room for the live stream, but I can discuss with him. He is not an audiovisual expert, he is IT, so we have to bring in another company to look at that. And as we can see, just running two different things tonight causes issues, so that's something that we're still looking at.
Okay, it's just one of those things. It seems like we're behind the times on that. That's why I want to keep bringing it up. It's a complaint I hear over and over. It kind of filtered into
Part of
our...
it is technology, and this building is not very technology friendly.
Okay. Yeah, I just know it filtered into the Heights conversation a little bit. They felt like... I just don't want anybody to ever feel like they don't have access or that something's being hidden from them or anything like that. So I think as soon as we can get that up and running, that would be excellent.
Seeing as how I picture speaker, I mean, I'm willing to do it for some fees, so just.
We'll keep you in mind, Councilman.
Any other business?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Hearing none, no opposition, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.